Direct questioning. Direct questioning is like having a normal conversation where one person asks questions to get some specific information. Imagine you lost your favorite toy and your mom is asking where you last saw it, what it looks like, and who was with you when you had it last. She's using direct questions to help find your toy. In the same way, the police or detectives use direct questions to gather facts about a case. They ask who, what, where, when, and why to understand what happened without playing any mind games. It's the simplest and most straightforward way to get information. The Reid Technique. The Reid Technique is a special way to talk to someone to find out if they did something wrong. Think of it as a detective story where the detective tries to figure out the mystery by talking to a suspect. First, the detective thinks about all the clues and evidence. Then, they talk to the suspect and try to show them that the evidence points to them, making them believe that confessing is their best option. The detective might say things like, "It will be better for you if you tell the truth now." This method is powerful but controversial because sometimes it can make people feel so pressured that they agree to things that aren't true just to end the conversation. Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love. The peace method. The peace method is like a friendly chat where the goal is to make everyone feel comfortable and willing to share information. Peace stands for preparation and planning, engage and explain, account, closure, and evaluate. First, the interviewer gets ready by learning all they can about the case. Then they start a friendly talk with the person, explaining why they are there and what they need to discuss. They let the person tell their story and ask some questions to clear up any confusion. In the end, they make sure everything said makes sense and say thank you for the cooperation. This method is like being a good listener in a conversation, making sure you understand everything while being nice and respectful. Good cop/bad cop. Imagine you and your friend are trying to convince your mom to let you have a sleepover. You might decide that one of you will beg and be very sweet, and the other will be a bit more stern, saying it might be the last chance before the school year gets too busy. That's sort of what the good cop/bad cop technique is. In this method, two interrogators work together. One acts very tough and serious, maybe a little intimidating, trying to make the suspect feel that they need to protect themselves by talking. Then, the other acts kind and understanding, offering comfort. This switch confuses the suspect, and they might start talking to the nice interrogator, hoping to get better treatment. Control Question Test, CQT. The control question test is part of a lie detector test, which you might have seen in movies. When someone takes a lie detector test, they're asked different kinds of questions. Some questions are about the case, like, did you take the missing money? And some are general questions that most people might lie about, like, have you ever lied to get out of trouble? The idea is to see how the person reacts to different questions. If they get more nervous on the crime-related questions than on the general ones, it might suggest they're hiding something about the crime. It's like trying to figure out if someone feels guilty about something specific by comparing how they react to different situations. High-Value Detainee Interrogation Group, HIG, Techniques. The High-Value Detainee Interrogation Group, HIG, techniques are special methods used mainly by the U.S. government when they need to find out important information from very significant suspects, like those involved in terrorism. These techniques focus on being effective but also ethical, which means they try to get information without harming or threatening the person they're talking to. The idea behind HIG is to use science-based interview strategies. These strategies might involve understanding the suspect's background and beliefs, using this knowledge to ask the right questions in the right way. It's like trying to solve a puzzle by carefully fitting pieces together, knowing exactly where each piece should go based on studying the picture on the puzzle box. This method helps to ensure that the information gathered is reliable and the methods used are respectful and lawful. Inbau and Reid's 9 Steps of Interrogation. Inbau and Reid's 9 steps of interrogation is like a detailed game plan for detectives when they think someone has committed a crime. It's a step-by-step approach designed to increase the pressure just enough to persuade the person to confess. Here's how it works. The interrogator starts by telling the suspect that the evidence clearly points to them, even if it doesn't. Then, they develop themes that suggest reasons why the suspect might have committed the crime, perhaps suggesting it was an accident or done in self-defense. Throughout the conversation, the interrogator blocks the suspect's denials and slowly sympathizes with them, trying to make them feel understood and making it easier for them to admit what they did. At the end, the interrogator gets them to recount the details of the crime, leading to a confession. This method is like slowly turning up the heat under a pot, hoping the contents inside will eventually boil over. Forensic Assessment Interview Technique, FAINT. The forensic assessment interview technique, or FAINT, is a way to figure out if someone is being truthful by carefully analyzing how they speak and behave during an interview. It's a bit like being a detective in a mystery book, where you're paying close attention to not just what the suspects say, but how they say it and their body language. The interviewer asks questions in a structured way and looks for signs of stress and nervousness that might suggest the person isn't telling the truth. They might also check how well the person's story sticks together. Do the details match up each time they tell it? It's like trying to spot the one person in a group who's pretending, by noticing small clues that don't fit. Minimization and Maximization. Minimization and maximization are like playing on a suspect's fears and hopes during an interrogation. Minimization involves making the crime seem less serious, suggesting that if the suspect confesses, the consequences won't be too harsh. It's like saying, "It's not that bad, and if you admit it, things will go easier for you." Maximization, on the other hand, makes the situation seem more serious, suggesting that evidence strongly points to the suspect, and if they don't cooperate, things could get much worse. It's like telling a scary story to make someone believe they have no way out unless they follow your advice. These tactics play on emotions, pushing the suspect towards confessing out of hope or fear. Kinesic Interview Technique. The Kinesic interview technique focuses on reading body language to tell if someone is lying. It's like being an expert on nonverbal cues. The interviewer watches how the suspect reacts to questions, noting everything from where they look to how they move their hands. It's based on the idea that certain gestures, facial expressions, and movements can accidentally reveal someone's true feelings or lies. For example, if someone looks away or fidgets a lot while answering a question, they might be uncomfortable or hiding something. It's like playing a game where you try to guess if someone is bluffing based on their actions, not just their words. Cognitive interview. The cognitive interview is a technique used especially by police to help witnesses remember more about what they saw. Think of it like a superpower that helps people recall details they thought they had forgotten. The interviewer asks the witness to mentally recreate the scene of the incident, focusing on sights, sounds, and even smells. They use open-ended questions, which means the questions don't just get a yes or no answer but allow the person to talk in detail. The interviewer might ask the witness to tell the story in different orders or from different perspectives, like imagining what it looked like from across the street. This helps jog the memory and can bring up small, important details that might have been missed the first time. It's much like rewinding and playing a video several times to catch every detail. Narrative Integration Technique. The narrative integration technique is all about understanding the story a suspect or witness tells. The idea is to let them speak freely at first, sharing their version of events without interruption. As they talk, the interviewer listens carefully to the story structure and content, looking for any inconsistencies or parts that don't make sense. After the initial narrative, the interviewer starts asking more targeted questions to fill in the gaps or clarify the unclear parts. This technique is akin to reading a book, then going back to review chapters that don't quite make sense, asking questions about the character's motives and actions to better understand the whole story. It helps investigators see the full picture and check if the story holds up under scrutiny. Box technique. The box technique is a method where the interrogator sets up a controlled environment, often a small, plain room, to focus the suspect's mind purely on the conversation. The simplicity of the surroundings helps eliminate distractions. During the interrogation, the interviewer uses psychological pressure, by controlling the conversation flow and using silence as a tool, to encourage the suspect to talk. The setup is designed to make the suspect feel that the only way out of the situation is by providing the information requested. It's similar to how a teacher might arrange for a quiet room for a student to focus solely on solving a difficult math problem, with minimal distractions and a clear expectation of working through the problem. Factual analysis interview technique. The factual analysis interview technique is all about comparing what the suspect says against known facts and evidence. The interviewer carefully prepares by knowing all the details of the case. During the interview, they ask precise questions that check the suspect's statements against these facts. If the suspect's story doesn't align with the evidence, the interviewer will point this out and ask for clarification. It's like a teacher checking your homework against the answers in the book. If something doesn't match, you're asked to explain how you arrived at your answer, which might reveal whether you guessed, made an honest mistake, or tried to deceive. Structured interview. In a structured interview, everything is planned in advance. The interviewer has a set list of questions, and they stick to this script throughout the conversation. This method ensures that every interview is conducted in the same way, which is especially useful when talking to multiple people about the same topic. It's like having a recipe for a cake that you follow exactly every time to make sure each cake turns out the same. This helps keep the information consistent and fair, allowing for accurate comparisons between different interviews. Behavior Analysis Interview, BAI. The Behavior Analysis Interview, BAI, is a pre-interrogation screening tool used to assess whether a person is likely being deceptive or truthful. It involves a structured set of questions designed to elicit certain behavioral responses that can indicate stress or deception. The questions are typically non-threatening and include both relevant and irrelevant questions to establish baseline behaviors. For example, an interviewer might ask about the person's general activities and feelings on the day in question versus their specific actions at the time of an incident. Observations about how comfortably someone talks about certain subjects, changes in body language, or inconsistencies in their story can provide clues about their truthfulness. Layered Voice Analysis, LVA. Layered Voice Analysis, LVA, is a technique that uses technology to detect emotional cues in a person's voice that may indicate stress, deception, or excitement. This technology analyzes various properties of the voice that are difficult to control voluntarily. During an interrogation or interview, the subject's responses are monitored for emotional spikes. These spikes, when correlated with specific questions, can suggest areas where the subject might be withholding information or being deceptive. It's like using a high-tech version of a lie detector, but it focuses on the voice rather than physiological responses like heart rate or skin conductivity. Strategic Use of Evidence, SUE, technique. The strategic use of evidence, SUE, technique involves the strategic disclosure of evidence during an interrogation to maximize the chance of catching a suspect off guard and eliciting a confession. In this approach, the interviewer withholds certain key pieces of evidence until later in the conversation. Initially, they allow the suspect to tell their story freely. As the interview progresses, they introduce evidence contradicting the suspect's account at strategic points, looking to see how the suspect reacts and adjusts their story. This technique can be particularly effective because it gives the suspect enough rope to create a story that can later be directly challenged with hard evidence. Information Gathering Approach. The information gathering approach is favored in jurisdictions that emphasize suspects' rights and the integrity of the confession process. Unlike accusatory methods, this approach avoids confrontational techniques and instead focuses on building rapport and encouraging the suspect to talk freely about the event in question. The interviewer adopts a neutral, non-judgmental stance, using open-ended questions to collect as much information as possible. This method is based on the principle that more accurate and reliable information can be gathered through cooperation rather than coercion. Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, MLAT, Interrogation. Though not a direct interrogation technique, mutual legal assistance treaties, MLATs, play a crucial role in cross-border investigations. An MLAT is an agreement between two or more countries that enables them to gather and exchange information in efforts to enforce public or criminal laws. When a suspect or crucial witness is in another country, investigators may use an MLAT to conduct interviews or interrogations in cooperation with law enforcement agencies of that country. This process ensures that the interrogation complies with the legal standards of both countries and that the information obtained can be used in court proceedings.